people. So that's like another area where the reporting of these isn't entirely accurate, and it will never be, because it's like the same thing with domestic violence, of the victims and then also the resources you need to allocate to prove the charges alleged.
The second question focuses on youth voters and their support for progressive policies. A survey done by the Alliance for Youth Action gives insight into youth voters, which in this study were voters aged 17 to 35. This study revealed the most important policies to this age group, such as reducing prescription drug costs, transitioning to 100% clean and renewable energy, eliminating student loan debt, and much more. This study led to the final question, which was, with our generation of voters overwhelmingly prioritizing policies considered progressive, what do you think the future political landscape looks like for America?
I think the political landscape in the future is going to be very interesting, especially if you look at that dynamic by each party. I think the Democratic Party is starting to have like a bigger surgence of progressive ideas, and it's gained a lot of support, and I think their voice is going to be much more heard throughout the political landscape, whether it be local, state, or federal levels. I don't think it'll be a clear shot either. I think there's a lot of obstacles ahead, especially with bridging the gap with more moderates in the party. I think personally, I think a lot of the division comes from like maximalism, and like if they won't get the idea or the policy issue 100% to the T that they wanted, they don't want it, and they aren't willing to like compromise or negotiate progress, maybe not to its fullest potential, but progress once you get down that line in the policy negotiations. But to better bridge that gap before I see the progressive ideas make it to the national stage. And the ideas themselves aren't progressive, like basic like human rights and like healthcare, like to people, like the common welfare of everyone, like those are not like political issues. So we shouldn't have to disagree on like those things in the first place. We might disagree on how we want the policies to be shaped after we agree on this common issue, but if we shouldn't have that disagreement in the first place. We might disagree how we go from that, but you all have to agree on that, like the basics first, before you can have any kind of discussion.
Okay. With the progressive ideas, well, ideas are considered progressive. What ones do you think are going to actually like come to fruition earlier rather than later? So whether it be the environment, healthcare, minimum wage, like what do you think is kind of coming sooner?
I think based off of reading just like leaks or just like insider reports from the Biden campaign and what they plan to do within like his first 50 days. I saw someone, I don't know if it was just someone made it up, but I saw someone say that he would like it to be like a FDR first 50 days type, where there's a bunch of things that like need to be done that are passed. Like, but I think prioritization wise, climate change has to be like at the top, just because that is our lives. That is the East and West Coast, and that it needs to be addressed, especially as one of like the top carbon producing countries. I think after that, just with seeing the election results with like the overwhelming support for like healthcare for everyone, I think that's probably up next. And then I would say after that, I feel like minimum wage is also on the cusp, because it's starting to be passed statewide, state to state. It's just slowly creeping everywhere that minimum wage, people want a living wage, not a minimum wage.
I was gonna say, like with the first question and like the policies that we're seeing recently try to be pushed, the ones that are considered progressive, but they're really like human rights and just healthcare in general and things like that for our communities. I think it's important to try to unify people that have similar ideals. No one's ever going to see eye to eye on everything, but I do think it's important to have both kinds of people, because moderates will blame the progressives, progressives will blame the moderates. But in the end, like, if we have like commonalities, we need to play on those. I think it's very important for progressives to kind of see where the moderates are coming from, but also for moderates to understand that they are in no way as progressive as they are because the progressives exist. Like, same thing with how we saw with like Bernie and Biden. Like, Bernie and his campaign and his supporters pushed Biden to be more progressive, to talk about our policies more, to talk about these things more. And I think that's important. It was like a very good example of what happens behind closed doors, what happens in people's homes and communities.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to kind of note that, because while there is a division, there's two sides and neither is stronger without the other.
With our generation being the ones on social media and using that to communicate with each other, and like that's how we share like the ideas of what we want, the progressive ideas, all of that, and that's how we've gotten our information about the election. And that was really utilizing the election, whether it be Twitter, TikTok, like anything, to really collectively go against Donald Trump. And what happens after there is no Donald Trump? And it's like, who are we going against? Now it's just policy. And if people don't understand that, then like what happens now with like the youth vote?
Yeah, I think that's definitely gonna like cause a decline, just because it's easy to demonize Trump. It's easy to go against that. He's one of the further right presidential candidates they've elevated, and he's said something about a run in 2024. But even like looking past that in 2028, because then that'll still be only people for our age. It'll be our third time voting in a presidential election. So, like past that, I feel like youth turnout in 2024 is gonna obviously take a hit. Probably, and if Trump runs, it'll probably still stay at an elevated compared to like 2016 and previous ones in 2012, whatever. But I think by 2028, it'll more level off and not so much stabilize back to where it was. I think it will have a lasting effect. I think because of this, more people have gained an interest in policy, like just past disliking Donald Trump, people have gained interest in like climate policy, like policy for immigration and things of that nature. But I think right now it's just at a heightened level, whereas it will eventually return to somewhat of a norm.
Yeah, I also agree. I think because Donald Trump ran on populism, like he was like this populist candidate, and he really didn't run on his policies. He ran like as a brand.
He couldn't even like state policies in debates.
Exactly. And I think that's why he was able to like garnish so many of like his supporters like off of social media that played an unprecedented role in the 2016 election. And 2020 as well. But I do agree with Jake. I think we will return to a lower level. I think it won't stay that way. I think overall, as like a younger generation, I see a divide between young voters along that two-party line. Because you have the messaging from the Democratic Party saying to get out to vote, like go vote, go vote, go vote. And even though it's not like inherently telling you who to vote for, they're still encouraging like their party, their supporters, anyone that they touch to go vote, where you don't really see or hear that same messaging coming from the Republican Party. So I think there will be an increase among Democratic youth voters, and the Republican youth voters will definitely decrease, I believe.
I was gonna say policy-wise, I think a lot of times when we're talking about like the youth and youth voters, we're envisioning ourselves, we're envisioning people that just graduated high school, when I really think that social media has a much farther reach than that. Specifically, kids in elementary school, they know who Donald Trump and Joe Biden are. Kids in junior high, high school, etc. And I think that a lot of those kids are now looking at kind of how policies affect people in real life, because now we're seeing things are being filmed, things are being retweeted and quote tweeted and everything, and reported on a much wider scale than things were before. Things were happening, behind the curtain, but now that everything's more visual and people are seeing the things happen, the horrible things happen in our society, I think a lot of kids and youth our age and younger are going to look into policy positions. They're going to look into getting involved in politics, whereas before that they wouldn't have. And I think that while we might see it level out more, like voting wise, I think a lot of people are going to get actually more engaged, like policy wise, like to be elected officials, to be someone running those campaigns, because before that policy, everyone was just indifferent. We don't really see it. It's hypothetical, but now I think it's very clear how not hypothetical the policies are and how they affect real lives, even if it's not yours. And I'm hoping to see more empathy in the younger generations under us.
Right.
I agree. Like, that just made me think of, like, we're getting access to stories that we didn't before, and it's like the first-hand account. Like, we're not just watching a news program that can be crafted to whatever bias or whatever. Like, if you're on Twitter, you can see a person, like, this is my story, this is exactly what happened. And it's also giving voice to minorities that maybe they didn't have before. So now you can hear the stories of someone that doesn't look like you and a problem that you wouldn't have, but you're like, wow, like, that affects people. Like, I had no idea. So, like you said, like, if that builds up over, like, maybe we'll start to see people take action, because now they're like, I've seen it and I want to fix it.
Yeah, and like with what Gina was saying, like more about stepping away from social media, but somewhat related to that, is like with this election, like, and the years before, but with what Trump has done, like with his brand, like the Make America Great Again, like if you supported Trump, like it like became like a part of your personality. And so like when you have like parents that are raising their kids that are like making them wear like MAGA hats or anything like that, or parents that are making their kids wear Biden Harris shirts or whatever, anything like that, bringing to it, because like growing up, like I lived in a very like non-political household. Like I didn't even have any clue of politics until I was like 18 or 19. And so like we did like a fake election in like 2008 with our grade school, and like I just voted for Obama because of just like things I had heard about him and like just stuff that appealed. Like it was nothing like I had worn a Obama Biden shirt before or anything like that. But like now you have kids where their parents are like full on Trump supporters, or parents are full on like Biden Harris, and obviously things like this existed before, but I feel like it's become more prevalent since 2016, where it's going to have an interesting effect, because I think it'll also, while it will like bring people to like come to politics at a younger age, I think that's also going to lead to more like voter burnout. Like, and not so much on the larger scale. I think it'll still broadly stay like an equilibrium. Like it won't have that much of a drastic effect, but I think it will have some change where you'll have people that get to like even 20 and be like, I just like can't do it anymore. Like I can't take the constant political thoughts and like the weight of it, of having like the things you vote for like actually affect that, and having to like not so much deal with it, but just think about that and have that constantly take up a space in your mind, where people just turn away from politics and be like, I don't want to have to think about that or deal with that.